My name is John McAvoy, and I work for the Federal Records Center program of the National Archives and Records Administration. This module will provide a detailed step-by-step demonstration of the creation of a new ARCIS portal user using each of the 9 individual profile features, plus an explanation of each access control and capability. Let's take a look. To create a new ARCIS user, first of all, you have to be named as an administrator within the ARCIS customer portal. If you are an administrator, you will be given the user administration capability, and you will see this tab entitled User Administration at the top of your home page. To create a new user, click User Administration, and in this area are all of the users that report to you via the branch function. Now keep in mind that I am a very powerful root level administrator, so I am looking at all users across my sample agency in this system. Typically, administrators only see those users that are assigned the branch that the administrator, him or herself, is assigned. But to create a new user, up at the top left section of the page, you'll see the New User button, and you'll click it, and then you'll be asked to provide an email address. And this is where we strongly suggest you use your agency's government email address. It is unique across the universe, and it just makes good business sense to use that. In addition to that, that will also be converted to the person's ARCIS user ID as well. So for this instance, I'm going to type in a username. And you have to type it in again. And before I hit the Go button, just to explain what's going to happen, when I click the Go button, if this particular username already exists in the system, I will get a message that says, this user already exists. Would you care to modify their profile? And then you have an option, yes or no. If they don't exist, then you will be presented with a blank template to begin creating this person's profile. So I click Go, and here I'm presented with a blank template. And similarly, you should start filling out the form from the top left and work your way to the right. Now in this case, you'll see some of these asterisks. These are minimum fields that need to be populated to be able to save the record. So what I'm going to click on here is last name Howe, first name Gordy. And as an administrator, I mean, if you want to, you can fill in the middle name and prefix and job title. But remember when we first talked about your own personal profile, this is one area that you can, in fact, edit yourself. So my suggestion to you as an administrator is don't populate all these fields. Let the user do it, and you'll convey that message to them in the emails that you will eventually send to them, notifying them of the ARCIS URL and their user ID, and then in a second email, their temporary password, with instructions to go in and inspect their personal profile, to add an address and phone numbers, etc., and also to make a challenge answer to a challenge question, and to also reset their temporary password. So next up, if you wanted to add an address for this new user, you could click on the selection box and click New and fill out the fields. The primary flag, since this is the first and only address, is automatically populated for you. But here we'll cancel. And then next up, this is your last chance to check this person's email address, because as you can see here, it automatically populates their user ID. So you want to take extra care to make sure that email address and user ID are properly populated. And in this case, they are. So next up, what you have to do is add a temporary password. My suggestion to you is to use the word change with a capital C, and then the @ insignia, and then followed by a sequence of 3 numbers at random would be a suggested way to create a temporary password. So here we're going to click change 12 pound, and again, now I've set a temporary password. And now your first real decision about this person's profile is, do you want them to be an agency transfer approver? In other words, do you want this person to be able to self-approve their own records transfers, or perhaps you're going to consider them for the records transfer approval capability where this person can approve transfers created by others? We'll leave it blank here. Now the copy profile function we're going to demonstrate in a different module, so I won't use it here. So at this point we filled out all of the fields, and now I'm going to click Save. And it'll lock in the user ID, and you'll also notice that the copy profile feature has vanished, and now we have user status. And as kind of a pre-lesson, if you ever need to inactivate somebody, you simply come in here and mark their status as inactive, and it will automatically scramble their password. But we'll leave it as active. Nothing else to do here, but my options are to make this done, or to change their password, which would be irrelevant at this point, or continue to branch. So when I click on continue to branch, you'll notice that the way you build somebody's profile is the branches that are available for you to give by virtue of what you have in your own profile as an administrator. In other words, you can only give out those things that you yourself have in your profile when you're an administrator. And what you do is you select the things that you want this person to have on the left side, and click the Add Selected button and move them over to the right side. Okay? Now, many agencies will probably only see the root level. Those are known as agencies with a flat hierarchical structure, but if your agency deployed with a robust hierarchical structure, much like you see here with levels 2, 3, and 4, and later on down the line, level 5, you can build this hierarchical structure of branches so that each administrator only oversees those that have the branch in their profile. So in this particular case, we're going to give Mr. Howe here the central division. So I'm going to highlight it by clicking the caret, and you have to remember to click Add Selected. Once I click Add Selected, it moved it from the left to the right. Now in some cases, it may automatically populate a branch for you. In this case, we don't want the root branch to be visible and assigned to Mr. Howe's profile. So here's what you do to fix that. I'm going to highlight the central division by clicking this Select Record button, and I'm going to set it as the primary, and now I'm going to be able to delete the root branch. One of the lessons in ARCIS is you can never delete an item that has the primary flag on it. You'll get an error message. So now I've moved the primary flag, and now I click Delete while having the root branch highlighted. I'll get a confirmation message, and I'll click OK. And now the root branch is gone, and this is a properly annotated branch profile for Gordie Howe. Next up, we continue to Record Center. Okay. Again, I have all of the record centers to give as part of my profile, but perhaps for this particular person, we only want to give the person, say, Boston, and you'll notice that I click the selection feature to the left of Boston, and we'll also give him the Pittsfield record center. And one thing that I want to teach you here, because this can be confusing for a new user, is you'll notice that there is a column entitled Selected. And you'll see where I have Boston with a check mark, and I have Pittsfield with a check mark, but I also have Fort Worth highlighted. Well, the lesson here is that when I click Add Selected, it's only going to move those items that have the check mark in that particular column. So for example, when I click Add Selected, it moved only Boston and Pittsfield, even though I had Fort Worth highlighted. Now next up in your decision-making process, what do you want this person to be able to do within those record centers? Do you want them to be able to place reference requests out of those record centers or create new records transfers to send to them? Well, in this particular case, what we're going to do is I'm going to select Pittsfield here, and I'm going to untoggle the Transfers button. So now, when Gordie Howe gets his user ID and password, when he goes into ARCIS, he'll be able to place reference requests out of both Boston and Pittsfield, but when he goes to create a new transfer, the only record center that will show up in his pick list is the Boston Record Center. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate by showing you what these toggle switches do. So next up, we'll continue to record group. And of course, I have 3 record groups to give, depending on what you have as an administrator, and your profile is all you'll have to give. So we'll give Gordy only record group B21. And I've clicked Add Selected. Again, you have the decision to make whether to allow reference or allow transfers here. Next, we continue to charge account. Again, depending on the charge account that you want to give somebody, depends on what you have in your own profile. We'll give this particular user charge code 11, and we'll click Add Selected. Oh, and some other functionality before we forget. You'll notice that there's a toggle all switch in some of these access control features. So I'll unclick that one, but if I click toggle all, it will put a check mark in everything. And then if you need to, you can certainly unselect a couple of things that maybe you don't want the person to have within their profile. Next, we'll go to security classification. And here are the security classifications and security levels that I have in my profile. But we're going to give Gordy unclassified standard storage. And I'm going to click Add Selected. And I move that over to the right as part of his profile. Next, we'll go to agency-defined fields. And depending on whether or not your agency deployed ARCIS with or without agency-defined fields, depends on what you might see here. This particular sample agency in our training database is not using agency-defined fields. So therefore, none is a valid value. However, if your agency did deploy with agency-defined fields, you might also see something like Department A, Department B, Department C, whatever it is that you've been given in your profile will be available for you to give to a new user that you're creating. Now, in the event that you are an agency that did not deploy with agency-defined fields, none on the left and none on the right is correctly input into the system. Don't try and delete the none that appears on the right side. You'll just get an error message saying that you can't. So if you're in this situation, it's good, and you can move on to the next component, which is capabilities. Now, as I described earlier in one of our earlier modules, these capabilities are the engines that turn on these tabs that you see up at the top. So for example, if you give any one of the records transfer capabilities, the records transfer tab will be visible. If you give one of the 3 reference requests capabilities, reference requests will be visible. If you promote the person to administrator, which I'll show you how to do in a second, then the user administration tab will be visible. So to go through each of these, everybody gets basic, and you'll notice that it's automatically populated in the right. Basic is the home page. Everybody has to have the home page. But then you have to make decisions about what you want this person to be able to do within the ARCIS customer portal. Well, certainly I want Gordy Howe to be able to create new records transfers, so what I'm going to do is select it, and unfortunately in capabilities you have to select one and add it. Select another one and add it individually. So I'm going to click Add Selected, and now Records Transfer Creation is over there. And then you have to make further decisions. Do I want this person to have the edit capability? Do I want them to approve records transfers created by others? Do I want to have them have the reassignment capability? What do I want this person to have? Well, I think that in this particular case, this person is a brand new employee. I want them to be able to create records transfers, but I also only want to give this person profile-specific view, so that when Gordy Howe goes in and he goes into profile-specific view, he'll only see records transfers whose access control properties match those in the things that we just built from a record group, record center, security classification, and charge account standpoint. So we're going to give him profile-specific view. I also want him to be able to place reference requests, so we'll give him reference request creation. And then down here, I'm going to give him profile-specific view for reference requests as well, and click Add Selected. Someday, if you want to promote a user to become an administrator, what you can do is click the Promote to Administrator button within the Capabilities area. So what I do is if I click Promote to Administrator, it will assign the person Administration 1 Standard, where I can create and edit users and other administrators. Okay? But then there's another button that now turns on, and that's the Allow Peer Administration button. Now, typically what peer administration means is that you can create another administrator at your own hierarchical level as well as it relates to your branch structure. It can also be used as a method for an administrator to administer users for an administrator of another branch when that person is on vacation. So in that example, what you would do is you would assign this person multiple branches, one of which, of course, has the primary flag affiliated with it. And if that, let's say there were two administrators, a West Coast and an East Coast administrator, and if I were the East Coast administrator and the West Coast administrator called me up and said, I'm taking a few days off, can you cover for me? I'd say, sure. So my administrator also gave me the West branch. So I would go in, modify my profile to have the West branch as my primary branch. I would log out, log back in, and when I clicked on User Administration, I would now be able to see the West Coast users, where before I could not. So that's another example of what the peer administration capability can do. More specific details about that are found in the ARCIS User Administration Manual. But Gordy's not ready to be an administrator yet, so I've got Admin 1 highlighted, and I'm going to select Delete and confirm it. Next up, we'll move to Reference Request category. So I will click on it. And here's an example of all of the different request category templates that we made available, some of which, of course, are agency-specific, like IRS tax return, SSA post-entitlement, Treasury T-checks, etc. Most agencies will deploy and they'll only be given the general reference request category, and you'll notice that it's already pre-populated to the right, so we're done here. And then one of the things that I like to joke about during this module is rule number 1 in all of ARCIS for all of user administration is once you click Done, after you inspect the work that you just, and this profile that you just created, you must click Done again. So remember that forever and always. Done and done again. Very important. Okay? So now this is my opportunity, before I click Done again, to check my work. And if I see something that perhaps I missed or that I want to give to this particular user, if I click on the individual profile setup component, like for example record group, it brings me back to this specific area, and maybe I want to give him a secondary record group. Click Add Selected and move that over. Now click Done. Re-inspect my work. There's the second record group, for example. Scroll back up and click Done again. And the reason that you have to click Done again is if you fail to do that, their profile will end up in this area called Incomplete Profiles. Now, incomplete profiles can mean one of two things. It means either you missed a component. Maybe you failed to give a record group because you forgot to hit the Add Selected button, for example. But it could mean that you failed to click Done and Done again. Let's take a look at Doug Bentley's profile. So what I'm going to do is click on his last name, and now let's take a look. Okay, I'm seeing something populated in every one of the 9 components so far. I've got everything here. So in this example, this is where I failed to click Done and Done again. Okay, now I'm going to click Done, and Bentley will be gone. Okay, now down here, now I can query for Gordie Howe. Click Go. And there he is. And if I ever need to modify his profile, simply look him up, click on the last name, and go into the specific component that requires modification, fix it, click Done and Done again. Now you can also click on Basic User Information. If you need to reset somebody's password, you simply click the Change Password button, and over here is the password area. Passwords need to be a minimum of 8 characters long, must have 1 capital letter, 1 number, and 1 special character, and that's how you have a properly formatted password. And you have to type it in twice, and then click Done, and of course, Done again. And that concludes on how to create a new user going through each of the 9 individual components that make up a person's profile. Once this profile is created, you will send the person 2 emails, or my suggestion is you send the person 2 emails, one with the ARCIS URL and their user ID is in the first email, and then a second email with their password, and also instructions or suggestions to go into their personal profile, make sure that everything is set up properly to their satisfaction, to add an address, phone numbers, etc., reset primary flags, and then that person is off and running with ARCIS. And that concludes the user administration step-by-step module. As always, help is available for the ARCIS customer portal. You can access a wealth of information at the ARCIS website, as well as access to all of the training manuals for all of the available components of ARCIS. Link to that via www.archives.gov/frc/ARCIS. There too you will find a link for the ARCIS Help Desk entitled Get Help, and that will provide you with information about the hours of operation for the ARCIS Help Desk in St. Louis, as well as their phone number and an email address. And lastly, you can contact your ARCIS administrator.